Laughter echoed through the living room, soft and joyful. Pink and gold balloons floated above pastel streamers, and a table overflowing with cupcakes, finger foods, and gifts stood near the window. Naomi sat in the center of it all, surrounded by her closest friends, her hand resting gently on her 6-month baby bump. Her eyes sparkled as she opened a tiny onesie that read, "Mama's favorite." Cameras clicked. Compliments were whispered. Her smile was genuine, until it wasn't. The door creaked open. Julian walked in, phone in one hand, keys in the other. His suit was impeccable, but his eyes were elsewhere, on the glowing screen in his hand, his thumbs flying across it as if nothing else mattered. He looked up briefly, offered a casual smile, and walked over to kiss Naomi's forehead. It was quick, mechanical. His eyes never really met hers. "You're late," Naomi said softly, keeping her tone light. "Yeah, work ran over. Couldn't get away," Julian replied, already looking back at his phone. Naomi laughed along as her friends tried to keep the mood up, but something inside her cracked. Quietly, she watched him step into the kitchen to take a call, speaking in hushed tones with his back turned. Her best friend, Kira, leaned in and whispered, "You okay?" Naomi forced another smile. "Yeah, just tired. Pregnancy brain, I guess." But inside she was spiraling. That night, the house was calm. Naomi lay curled under the duvet, her body sore, her mind racing. Julian kissed her forehead again, whispered, "Love you," and turned off the lamp beside her. She heard the bedroom door click shut, but sleep didn't come. Down the hallway, Julian opened the door to the guest room quietly. He reached into the closet, pulled out a shoebox, and from it retrieved a second phone. Within seconds, he was FaceTiming someone, smiling, whispering, chuckling in a voice Naomi hadn't heard in weeks. "Missed you too," he said softly. "She's finally asleep. You wouldn't believe how swollen she's gotten. Like a balloon." Naomi wasn't asleep, not really, and she wasn't unaware. Months ago, after catching a strange message flash briefly on his phone, she'd done something she never thought she would. She installed 2 tiny, nearly invisible security cameras, one in the living room, one in the guest room. She never told anyone, not even Kira. Lying in the dark, listening to the silence of the master bedroom, Naomi opened the baby shower gift bag beside her. Between the cards and diapers, she pulled out her phone. She tapped the app connected to the cameras, and the screen lit up. Julian's face filled the frame. He was laughing, whispering, shirtless. She watched the live feed, numb, as the voice on the other end purred something back. And then her own voice, calm and clear, echoed in her mind. "I thought this was the happiest chapter of my life until I learned how wrong I was." And now she had proof. Naomi had always carried herself with quiet strength. Raised in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Decatur by a single mother who juggled 2 jobs and 3 side hustles, she learned early what it meant to survive without shortcuts. Her mother, Lorraine, never had much, but she gave Naomi everything that mattered: love, discipline, and the unshakable belief that her daughter could create a life far bigger than the one they lived in. That belief became Naomi's compass. She put herself through college, earning a marketing degree while waitressing nights and freelancing on the side. There were no handouts, no safety nets, just grit and a calendar packed with deadlines. By 23, Naomi had her first big campaign for a startup that went viral. By 24, she was her own boss, working from a home office, sending money back to help her mother retire early. And then came Julian. They met at a mutual friend's birthday party. Naomi in a rust-colored wrap dress, Julian in a tailored navy suit, already a rising star in the finance world. He was quick-witted, confident, and unapologetically smooth. Within a month, they were inseparable. He sent flowers just because, surprised her with weekend getaways, told everyone she was his queen. Naomi had never felt so seen, so admired. They moved in together 6 months later. The apartment was spacious, bright, filled with modern furniture and matching wine glasses. Their social media pages told a story of a picture-perfect couple. "Power, love, goals," people would comment. But behind the filtered smiles, cracks had started to form. At first, Naomi chalked it up to stress. Julian worked long hours, and so did she. But slowly, he stopped asking about her projects, stopped holding her hand in public. Intimacy dwindled from weekly to monthly. He brushed off her concern with lines like, "You're always tired," or "Work's draining me." And then the little signs began to stack. A a perfume scent on his shirt that wasn't hers, a strange receipt in his wallet for dinner at a restaurant she'd never been to, missed calls late at night from a co-worker named T.H. Still, Naomi tried to remain hopeful. She was 6 months pregnant after all. Hormones, fatigue, paranoia. Maybe it was just all in her head. That's what she told herself, again and again. But when Julian started calling her clingy and said she wasn't fun anymore, something inside her shifted. She stopped trying to rationalize. She started watching. The cameras were tiny, discreet, tucked behind a vase in the living room, under the bookshelf in the guest room. She told herself it was for safety, that being pregnant and often home alone warranted extra caution. But deep down, she knew it wasn't fear of a break-in. It was fear that the man she had built a life with, who had placed his hand on her growing belly and smiled for maternity photos, was already gone. Naomi didn't want to be right. She prayed she wouldn't be. But some part of her already understood the truth, and she was preparing for the moment when she would have to face it. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest. Naomi sat curled on the corner of the couch, her feet propped on a pillow, one hand resting protectively on her belly. The television played reruns of a show she couldn't focus on. Julian had left an hour ago, dressed in his best charcoal suit, claiming he had a client dinner downtown. He hadn't even kissed her goodbye, just a distracted "don't wait up" as he adjusted his cufflinks and walked out. She stared at the door long after it closed. The baby shifted, a small flutter that felt like a whisper. Naomi smiled weakly, stroked her stomach. Then something nudged her, a flicker of instinct she had learned not to ignore. She reached for her phone, opened the security app, and pulled up the living room feed. She rewound to earlier in the day, expecting nothing, just routine. But around 5:46 p.m., her blood turned cold. The front door opened. Julian walked in, not alone. A woman followed, maybe mid-20s with glossy dark curls and a coat she shrugged off like she belonged. Naomi paused the screen, zoomed in. Celeste. Naomi didn't know her well, only from a company retreat photo Julian had once shown her in passing. Just one of the interns, he'd said casually. But there she was, laughing, taking her shoes off, handing Julian a bottle of wine. Naomi hit play again, watched her husband pour 2 glasses, watched him sit beside Celeste on the very couch she was sitting on now. They kissed like teenagers, familiar, unashamed, and then Naomi watched herself fall out of her body. She saw them clink glasses, saw Julian lean in, whisper something into Celeste's ear that made her laugh until she nearly spilled her drink. Then came the part that hurt worse than betrayal. Julian's voice, low, mocking. She cries over everything now. You'd think being pregnant makes her the center of the universe. Celeste giggled, curling against him. She's gained so much weight, I barely recognize her. Honestly, it's like living with a stranger who always wants to talk about the baby. Naomi froze. Her heart didn't break, it shattered, not because of the cheating, but because he made her feel like a burden for simply carrying their child. She pressed her palm to her belly, tears falling silently, not from rage, not yet, but from something deeper. He used my body as an excuse, she whispered to the empty room. He blamed me while growing our child. The footage showed them walking toward the guest room, his hand on the small of Celeste's back. Naomi stopped the video. She sat there, hollowed out, chest rising and falling in slow motion. Her body was trembling, but her hands moved with precision. She opened her laptop, navigated to a private Dropbox folder titled House Security, Archive. With methodical detachment, she began pulling the footage. Clip 1, Julian and Celeste entering home, 5:46 p.m. Clip 2, guest room entry, 6:12 p.m. Clip 3, conversation on couch, mocking comments, 6:05 p.m. Each was labeled, time-stamped, saved. Her hands never shook. She added a new subfolder and titled it, Truth, Just in Case, because something in her had changed. And now, she wasn't just heartbroken, she was documenting. Naomi began to disappear quietly. No confrontation, no yelling, just silence. She stopped asking Julian what time he'd be home, stopped texting him when he was late, stopped setting the dinner table for 2. When he walked in, she'd nod, maybe say, hey, and that was it. Conversations shrank to necessities. Can you grab more milk? Or, doctor's appointment on Tuesday. He didn't seem to mind. In fact, Julian seemed relieved. With every inch Naomi pulled away, he grew more casual, more careless. Naomi, meanwhile, grew sharper, quieter but sharper. She started attending prenatal yoga and birth classes alone, telling the instructors Julian was traveling for work. The sympathetic glances didn't faze her. She was used to masking pain. She had learned from watching her mother do it, back straight, voice steady, heart in pieces. After one class, she sat in her car for 20 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, until she finally worked up the courage to call the number she'd saved 2 weeks ago. Price, Turner and Associates. How can I help you? Yes. I'd like to schedule a consultation, Naomi said. It's regarding a divorce and use of digital surveillance footage. The receptionist didn't even flinch. Of course. We handle many cases like that. When would you like to come in? Naomi scheduled it for a Thursday morning. Julian never noticed she was gone. That weekend, over tea, her best friend Kira leaned in and said, "You need to be smart about this, Nye. Don't confront him until you're ready to walk. And I mean ready. Not emotional, not just tired. Ready." Naomi nodded. "I'm almost there." Kira didn't smile. "Then let him keep thinking you're stupid until you're not." Back home, Julian flopped onto the couch and sighed theatrically. "Are we gonna talk? Or are you just gonna keep giving me the silent treatment?" Naomi looked up from her laptop, forced a puzzled expression. "I'm not silent. You're cold. You've changed." She gave a soft smile. "I'm just tired, Julian. Pregnancy's a lot." He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "You're not supportive anymore. You used to be fun. Now all you do is mope and sleep. I'm trying to keep this house together, and you're just somewhere else." Naomi nodded slowly, like his words carried weight. "You're right. I'm sorry." He blinked, caught off guard by the apology. She didn't fight, didn't cry, just reached for her glass of water and sipped. Inside, she was stitching together the final seams of her plan. That night, after Julian left for drinks with a client, Naomi scrolled through archived footage, organizing files by date, room, and behavior. She was building something, a narrative, a foundation, and then she found it, a glitch in the timeline, a missed timestamp in the garage camera's history. Curious, she pulled up the raw data feed and noticed brief surges of activity in the corner where Julian's tool cabinet stood. She went out to the garage with her phone flashlight, opened the cabinet. Behind a shelf of motor oil and car polish sat a small black box taped to the back wall, a burner phone. Naomi's hands were steady now. She took it inside, plugged it in, and waited. The screen lit up. No passcode. The first thing she saw was the photo gallery, over 60 videos, all with blurry thumbnail herself. She tapped on one. The screen filled with a clip of her in the bathroom, eyes red, holding her belly, crying. Another clip, her curled on the couch, clutching a bucket, vomiting. Another, her snapping at Julie's frustration, voice shaking from exhaustion. Every moment, fragile, vulnerable, pregnant. And then the message from Julian to Celeste. "Julian, here's today's episode of Hormonal Rage. Julian, she's so dramatic. I swear I deserve a medal. Julian, video attached. She's crying again because I forgot to say I like the name Nico. You can't make this up. Celeste, OMG, she's a mess. Julian, can't wait till she pops. I'll be free." Naomi's hand flew to her mouth, but no sound came out, not even tears, just breathe, cold and shallow. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was cruelty, measured, mocking, rehearsed. He had been documenting her unraveling like she was a joke, a show, an inconvenience he had to endure for 9 months before pressing reset on his life. She gently placed the phone beside her own. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Naomi allowed herself to feel not just sadness, but clarity. He wasn't just lying to her. He was planning his exit. So now, she would plan hers. The nursery was nearly finished. Soft grey walls, a mobile that spun slowly above the crib, little socks folded neatly in drawers Naomi had organized weeks ago. But there was one final thing to prepare before the baby arrived, her exit. 2 weeks before her due date, Naomi packed a small overnight bag and told Julian she was going to spend the weekend at her mother's house, to rest. He barely looked up from his phone when she said it. "Cool, take your time," he muttered. She kissed him on the cheek. "Don't worry, the cameras are still rolling." He didn't even register the warning. Naomi drove 2 blocks away, parked, and waited. She watched through the live security feed on her phone. At 6:14 p.m., Julian arrived back home with Celeste. They barely made it to the couch before Julian pulled her onto his lap. He poured wine, just like before. Naomi didn't watch this part. She knew it by heart. Instead, she double-checked her files, USBs, cloud folders, backup drives, every betrayal documented, every insult, lie, and whispered mockery filed with surgical precision. At 7:52 p.m., the guest room door closed, lights dimmed. That was her cue. She walked up the driveway calmly, entered with her spare key, and locked the door behind her. The hallway was silent except for muffled laughter. Naomi moved slowly. Her steps were steady. Her hands didn't shake. She opened the guest room door. Julian and Celeste froze, tangled in sheets, their laughter strangled mid-breath. Naomi stood in the doorway, not screaming, not crying, just holding her phone. "Don't get up," she said, voice low but firm. "We're going to watch something together." Julian blinked, trying to pull the blanket higher. Naomi, what are you doing here?" She didn't answer. She tapped play on the first video. The audio filled the room. Julian's voice thick with sarcasm. "She cries over everything now. You'd think being pregnant makes her the center of the universe." Julian shifted. "Okay, wait." Naomi tapped to the next clip. Celeste gasped. There they were, from 2 weeks ago, kissing in this very bed. Another tap. Julian's voice again. "Can't wait till she pops. I'll be free." Silence. Celeste was already crying. "Julian, you said she didn't—" Naomi cut her off. "This house has been under surveillance for 3 months." Julian stood, stumbling over his own words. "Naomi, this isn't what it looks like." She raised one hand. "Stop." He fell quiet. "You signed a prenup," Naomi said, her voice still eerily calm. "Adultery voids all your claims to joint assets. My lawyer has everything. Copies, footage, messages. The third phone too." Julian's jaw clenched. Naomi looked directly at him. "You can pack a bag and leave tonight, quietly, or you can be served at your office. Tomorrow, in front of your boss, in front of your staff." Celeste covered her face, sobbing. "I didn't know." Naomi turned to her. "He lied to me while I carried his child. He lied to you while I bled, while I vomited, while I couldn't sleep through the night. You'll survive." She turned to leave. Julian's voice cracked behind her. "Naomi, please, don't do this. We can talk." She paused at the door and looked back once. "I begged you to love me honestly. You chose to humiliate me instead." Then she left. Not just the room. She left the version of herself who waited for love that hurt, and never looked back. The hospital room was quiet, save for the soft cooing of the newborn in Naomi's arms. Her mother sat beside her, gently stroking Naomi's hair, while Kira stood near the window, wiping her eyes with a tissue she pretended not to need. Amara had arrived just after sunrise. 6 pounds, 11 ounces of life Naomi had fought to protect, even when her own world was falling apart. She looked down at her daughter's tiny face, at the way she furrowed her brow even in sleep, and whispered, "You will never beg anyone to love you, not the way I did." Julian never showed up at the hospital. Naomi had told the nurses she didn't want him notified. Legally, he still had rights, but the court date was coming soon, and she had no intention of letting him anywhere near their child. His lawyer reached out 3 days after Amara's birth. "Ms. Collins, my client would like to resolve this amicably. He's open to mediation. A private settlement." Naomi interrupted, her voice firm but polite. "Number will let the judge see everything." She hung up and uploaded the last of her evidence to the secure court platform. Time-stamped videos, emotional manipulation, messages, the footage from the guest room. A week later, her lawyer called. "You've been granted full custody. He'll be required to pay monthly child support and spousal support, and your prenup held." Naomi felt no joy, only a quiet peace. It wasn't revenge, it was protection. A few days after the court ruling, Celeste sent a message to Naomi through Kira, a voice note, shaky and hesitant. "I didn't know he was still with you. I thought you'd broken up, and when I found out, I was already in too deep. I'm sorry, Naomi. I really am." Naomi thought about it for a long time. Then she sent a short reply. "I hope one day you love yourself enough to leave men like him." She didn't block her. She didn't need to. Some lessons weren't hers to teach. Instead, Naomi focused on Amara. Late nights with lullabies and warm bottles. Early mornings with snuggles on the couch. She rediscovered parts of herself she thought were gone. Gentleness, laughter, strength that didn't roar but held steady. One afternoon, as Amara napped, Naomi opened her laptop and started writing a blog post. Title, "Becoming a Mother While Surviving a Betrayal." She shared pieces of her story, not names, not scandal, just truths. How it felt to be lied to while building a life, how it felt to birth a child into a storm and still come out standing. Women began messaging her, strangers from all over. Thank you. Me too. I thought I was the only one. Naomi smiled. She wasn't just surviving. She was becoming someone new, someone whole. The morning light spilled through sheer curtains, casting a golden glow across the living room. The house was still, save for the soft creak of the rocking chair and the occasional coo from the tiny bundle in Naomi's arm. Amara stirred, her small hands curled into fists against her mother's chest. Naomi hummed softly, an old lullaby her own mother used to sing. The world outside moved on, but here, in this sunlit moment, everything felt whole. Her laptop sat open on the nearby table. The blog was still up from last night's post. She leaned forward slightly, careful not to wake Amara, and clicked to refresh the page. A new comment blinked on the screen. Thank you for sharing your story. I thought I was alone. Naomi's eyes lingered on the words. They felt familiar, like something she might have written months ago, in the thick of her own storm. She glanced down at Amara, now asleep again, her chest rising and falling in soft rhythm. Naomi brushed a kiss on her daughter's forehead, then placed her hand gently over those tiny fingers that would one day grow strong, steady, and fearless. You'll never have to wonder what love looks like, Amara, she whispered. You were born from strength, not shame. Outside, the morning moved quietly. Inside, Naomi finally exhaled the breath she didn't know she'd been holding for months. The past hadn't broken her. It had simply cleared the space for who she was meant to become. Fade out. Hi besties, thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe.